Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the defense mechanism for Enneagram Type 1. Now, I didn't set out to start this study. I was actually just doing a study on Type 1s and working on some other content when I ran across that concept of the defense mechanisms or the defense strategies for Type 1, and I thought, okay, I need to go back and I need to reinvestigate this. I know I came across this information early on, but I couldn't remember all of the defense mechanisms for every type. So I decided, you know what, let's take some time and really investigate this and unpack this together. And, I think I'm going to do a video on each of the Enneagram types' defense mechanisms. This led to a pretty serious study. I've got a 27-page ebook on my website for you for free. Just go to the store, hit the website, tomlahue.com, go up to the top of the menu where it says store, click on that, and you'll see all of my books there, my ebooks. So thanks again for your support, and thanks for your encouragement. We're right at about 50,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. And thanks for being on this journey with me. If I can help you in any way, if you're feeling stuck in life, you're not sure what's next, or maybe your relationships feel very challenged and difficult, look, I'm here to help. Reach out to me, go to my website, look at the Enneagram coaching, the Present to Life program. I'd love to walk with you on this journey. Also, a lot of different classes available as well. So when we talk about defense mechanisms, realize every Enneagram type has a certain strategy that you employ, whether you realize it or not. A unique way of defending yourself. The reality is life can be difficult and there's a lot of challenges that are thrown your way, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming, and all of us want to protect ourselves from pain and discomfort in this world, and we seek to justify our behaviors. You can say it like this: every type, every person does what makes sense to them. Even though it may not make sense, for the greater good, or it may not make sense in moving you toward your goals or helping your relationships, nobody does what doesn't make sense to them. And part of what makes sense to us is to defend ourselves if we're feeling a little bit ashamed or a little bit guilty. We have certain predictable mechanisms that each type employs to defend ourselves against these painful feelings. So these defense mechanisms, while they are protective, self-protective, they can also serve as a barrier to our personal growth, and sometimes make it difficult for us to be fully present in our world. And we want to shed light on these defense mechanisms, these defense strategies, and help you see what might be holding you back from pursuing your goal in life. By recognizing and addressing these defense mechanisms, you can begin to work through the underlying issues and open the door to greater self-awareness and self-development. And this can be uncomfortable. When we start to look beneath the surface, of course, we're going to find things that we don't really want to see about ourselves or focus on ourselves. So many people will not do this kind of work because it's uncomfortable or embarrassing, and it can be unpleasant. So in the world of psychology, these defense mechanisms or subconscious strategies help us cope with reality and maintain our sense of self, or maintain our self-image. And, what are these? Well, just briefly, I want to talk about each of the types, and then we'll come back and spend some time, the bulk of the time, on Type 1. So Type 1's defense mechanism is rationalization. You say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, let me give you a phrase that a 1 might say to rationalize their behaviors or their actions. They might say something like this: well, the reason I did what I did, or the reason I said what I said, was because it seemed like the right thing to do under the circumstances. Or somebody needed to say something. Somebody needed to speak up. And so notice that rationalization. Type 2's, the defense mechanism is repression. I'm fine, really. I'm okay. I'm just here to make sure everyone else is happy. So repressing your own needs. 3's, identification. Like identifying yourself with that hero or that person who's excelling. I've always identified with successful people. It's just who I am and where I see myself going. Type 4's, the word is introjection. So the defense mechanism is introjection. I feel so deeply connected to these feelings I'm having that it's like they're becoming a part of who I am. or becoming my identity. Type 5s, the defense mechanism is isolation. I need to step back and think through this on my own, away from everything and everyone else. Type 6s, the defense mechanism is projection. Well, it's not that I'm anxious, you see, it's just that people are so unpredictable and you never can be too careful. So projecting that anxiety as though it's being caused by others outside of yourself. Type 7s is also rationalization, but I prefer the word justification. What? I'm just trying to make the best out of a difficult situation. There's a silver lining in everything. So justifying our expenses, justifying our funny words that may have been inappropriate or hurt someone's feelings. I was just joking. You can say it that way. In fact, I'm going to write that down. I was just joking. If you live with a 7, no doubt you've heard that defense, when they've hurt someone's feelings. Type 8 is denial. And it can be denial of a lot of things, but primarily like denial of one's own vulnerability or weaknesses. Like, I don't see what the problem is. I'm fine. We just need to keep moving forward. Or I don't have my feelings hurt. You have your feelings hurt. Type 9s is narcotization. Hey, you know what? Let's just relax and not worry about it. I think we're giving too much, pressure on this right now, and it's just going to work itself out in the end. You see, and so it's kind of like going back to sleep or giving yourself permission to go back to sleep. All right, so that's a little bit of an introduction to how each type defends itself or ourselves, and let's take the rest of the time and talk about type 1s. Now, I'm going to be looking at the notes that, like I said, are available to you on my website. Just go to my store and download the free copy of The Hidden Battle, Each Type's Defense Strategy. So type 1s are often referred to as the reformers, not the performers, that's the 3s, but reformers and perfectionists. And they, of course, have a strong sense of right and wrong and duty and obligation, you might say, and a desire to live with integrity and to be good people. I mean, who can fault this? This is a wonderful DNA for a personality type. A commitment to improve their situation, a commitment to improve themselves and their surroundings. A core desire to live ethically, to live morally upright, upstanding lives, and to live up to their high standards. Now, their core fear, of course, is of being corrupt or evil, defective. I would also say lazy, not, let's say, shirking your duty and responsibility. All that would feel like anathema, which means to be cursed, to a type 1. So striving perfection in themselves and in their environment. Now, the defense mechanism, we said, was rationalization. And this would involve things like justifying your own actions or thoughts in a way that better aligns with your strict internal standards and values. So a way to reconcile your own imperfections in yourself or in the world to maintain that sense of an ideal standard of the way things should be. So how does rationalization show up for type 1s? Well, here's some thoughts. Number 1, justifying criticism. The never ever behavior for a 1 is never criticize a 1. And there's never ever behaviors for all of the types. I don't know if I can remember them all right now, but if you're sitting there wondering, well, what are the never ever behaviors for all the other types? Well, for 2s, never take a 2 for granted. For 3s, never ignore a 3. 4s, never tell a 4 what they should do because they're listening to their internal, sense of self. 5s, never underestimate a 5. 6s, never lie to a 6. 7, never try to control a 7. 8s, never betray an 8. And 9s, never talk over a 9. So interesting, but let's go back to the 1. One of the ways rationalization might show up for a type 1 is justifying criticism. So again, never criticize a 1, but 1s often are very critical of themselves, the world around them, and others. And if somebody said to you, gosh, you're so critical, gosh, you're so negative, which if you're a 1, you've no doubt heard that. You're so serious. Could you relax, lighten up a little bit, right? So ones might rationalize their critical thoughts or judgments of others by believing it's for the other person's good. That's the only reason I said anything. It's just because I care and because I take this seriously. So I'm actually trying to help the other person by tearing them down and criticizing them, framing your criticisms as though it is help or constructive, which it may very well be, but just realize everybody has a tolerance for being criticized, and not anyone enjoys criticism. Even if people laugh with you, even if they let it roll off their shoulders, it's always very difficult to hear criticisms, as you well know. So you want to be careful about justifying or rationalizing your critical statements or your critical looks or your critical behavior with it's just because I care. Okay. All right. The second way that this might show up is explaining away your anger. When ones feel anger or resentment, they may rationalize these emotions as justified responses to inefficiency or immorality or incompetence. Like, I don't want to be angry, but what am I supposed to feel when people won't do what they're supposed to do, when they won't cover the basics? Rather than acknowledging these as personal feelings that could be explored more deeply, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't help it. They made me upset. They made me angry. If they would take their responsibility seriously and show up when they said they'd show up, then I wouldn't have to blow my stack. Okay. All right. Next is the area of moral superiority. Moral superiority. Ones might rationalize their adherence to rules or principles as evidence that they live to a higher standard, or that they, are standing on the moral high ground. So ones might rationalize their adherence to the rules or principles as a sense of like being better, the way things should be, or the way people should be, using this as a defense mechanism against feeling their own feelings of feeling flawed or imperfect. Next is avoiding imperfection. They may rationalize away their mistakes or imperfections by focusing on their intentions or the greater goal. Yes, okay, we made some mistakes, but I was only trying to get things right, or I was just trying to make sure that our bases were covered. Did you know you hurt Margaret's feelings when you said that in the meeting? Well, that may be well and true, and then that rationalization of, or justification of, I'm just trying to make sure that everything gets done, or make sure that everything gets, accomplished. I'm sorry, I can't be responsible for their feelings. I'm focused on the greater goal here. I'm focused on making sure that we get our work done, that we comply. Remember, ones are a compliant type, that we comply with the needs of that are around us. And in that way, I just realized that you may be minimizing the impact of your actions or your words on, someone else. Let's just say it's not that compassionate. And then let me do one more, and then I got some more interesting ideas that can help. The next is your strict standards, your overly strict standards. Their high standards for themselves and others can be rationalized as necessary for improvement, success, and ethical living, sometimes to the detriment of compassion and understanding of human fallibility. Okay, so one of the ways to think about each Enneagram type, that is just a fantastic idea that will immediately begin to challenge you and challenge the way you think, is just think about for a moment, the numbers you're connected to. As a 1, you have a 9 wing, a 2 wing, a line to 7, and a line to 4, okay? Just think about for a minute the wisdom those other types might give you, and you'll immediately start to see kind of some of your own shortcomings or some of your own areas for growth. And notice like your 2 wings, for example, 9 and 2. Think about what those wings would say to a 1. And you've got some great advice as to how to begin to deconstruct this defense mechanism and to see how it could be detrimental to your actual moving forward and having healthy relationships. Your defense mechanisms could be detrimental. Think about the 9 looking at the 1 and saying, man, can you just, tone it down a little bit and try to understand other people's perspectives? Maybe the best thing you can say is nothing right now. Can you just try to understand other people rather than always feeling the responsibility to correct or improve them? Maybe it's you who needs to be improved by being more quiet and being more accepting. And you may listen to that and be like, oh, baloney, hogwash, and it's because you're not a 9 that you would think that way or say that. But just think of a 9 looking at you as a 1 and saying, wow, you don't have a lot of peace in your life. You don't have a lot of peace in your home. You don't have a lot of peace in your relationships. Like, there's not a lot of harmony. Like, there doesn't seem like a strong value for harmony. You have such a strong value for making things right or improving things, but maybe you could increase your value for getting along with people, and maybe that's the real help that you need to offer to people, is working to harmonize, bringing comfort, and trying to live at peace with all men. And then think about the 2 wing right next to you saying, wow, that's not very loving. That's not very compassionate. It's not very encouraging. I always say, if you want to know how you're doing great, ask a 2. If you want to know how you suck, ask a 1. And just think of that 2 saying, wow, what you said may have been accurate, but it just wasn't said with grace. It wasn't said with compassion. Could you be more careful and more loving and more generous? Could you give 5 positives to 1 negative? Do you even give positives? Like, you need to balance that out a little bit and be a kinder, compassionate soul. Just look at how those wings begin to help you. Like, love doesn't seem important to you. Like, getting it right, being responsible, being ethical, those are wonderful things that everybody should value. But you should also value your relationships. Like, sometimes the relationship needs to be the priority, and maybe correcting could come later. Like, what would you say or do right now if you just wanted to reconnect with this person? Would you really tell them how they messed up? Would you really point out their inconsistencies or their lack or their failures? If your real goal was to connect with this person, because I could see the 1 being that, very principled mother or father. Their daughter, goes out and gets pregnant, and then they just say, well, no daughter of mine, until she repents, I realize that's a very old-fashioned, kind of analogy, but it's what comes to my mind is, until she makes right and owns, her wrong, or my son who got a girl pregnant, until they repent and until they make it right, they're just not welcome in my house. Like, that's a really hard line. And if that's your line, okay, I respect that. But just think about 9 and 2. Like, I get chills just thinking about the wisdom of the Enneagram, right? Just think about, would a 9 or a 2, is that the way they would respond? And you're like, yeah, but I'm not a 9. I'm not a 2. I'm a 1. Okay, I get it. But, you're not just a 1. That's kind of the whole point of all of this, is learning to see how, maybe your personality's impulses and compulsions limit your ability to see a broader perspective. And just notice the wings next to you are a great source of wisdom. When you don't know what to do, like, or a 1, when I don't know what to do, I do the right thing, okay? When you don't know what to do, ask yourself, what would a 9 do right now? Or what would a 2 do right now? And realize at your best, you look like a 7. I mean, think about that. Happy, joyful, fluid in your thinking, lots of opportunities in front of you, lots of options in front of you, seeing the best in every situation, focusing on the positive. Wow, we got a lot of room to grow, don't we? All of us. I'm not picking on you guys. Just people in my comments say, wow, you don't like 1s. I love 1s. I learned so much from you that I need to incorporate that sense of responsibility, that sense of duty, that sense of, complying with the needs and demands of the moment and tasks and people around you. I have so much respect for type 1s, maybe more respect for 1s than anybody. I mean, your desire to live with integrity commands respect, but it needs to be balanced with compassion and love and understanding and harmony and joy and enthusiasm of the 7. And then that line to 4, just think about, that quest for meaning and that understanding that everybody, is listening to their own inner compass and trying to do what makes sense to them. Just think about that with 4s, like listening to your own voice, and I've got to be true to myself. And people are trying to be true to themselves. It's not going to make sense to you always. It's not always going to align with your strong sense of right and wrong. But, just learning to accept people in their imperfections. Because look at a hard 1. A hard 1 in the Bible. Think about the Pharisees. Somebody told me the other day, I bet Jesus was a 1. I'm sure Jesus was a 1. His desire to be perfect and to live perfectly and to help others find perfection. I was like, wow. Yeah, I don't think Jesus was a 1. And you go, well, what type was Jesus? I don't think Jesus was an Enneagram type. Every one of these types is rooted in a dominant sin. I think Jesus is a picture of what humanity was in the Garden of Eden, not an Enneagram type, not constrained or limited like all of us are. We all have this mark of brokenness on us. I think Jesus transcended this Enneagram, But that's my theology, and I don't have time to get into all of that. I do actually have a course on my website called The Enneagram and Christian Life Coaching or Christian Living or something like that, where I do unpack my theology of the Enneagram if you're interested in that kind of thing. But I don't think Jesus was a 1. I think he had the best of, you see the best of oneness in him. But really, think of the Pharisees, condemning people, trying to uphold the details of the law, but not really having compassion for people. And Jesus calls that out for what it is. It's the older brother in the story of the prodigal son. The prodigal son's probably a good picture of a 7, a 7 wing 8 or 8 wing 7 or something. And then the older brother is a good picture of a 1. Look at me. I've been here the whole time doing the right thing, being responsible. And really in the story, he's the lost son, not the wayward son who went off to, invest his life in Epicurean wild living, but the one that stayed home, but whose heart was not really, where it ought to be. All right, so let's wrap this up. For 1s, what does growth look like? What does growth look like for a 1? In light of this, realizing our defense strategy as rationalization. For 1s, growth involves recognizing and softening their inner critic. It means confronting that, realizing there's a boulder chasing you, this inner critic, that's chasing you down, to turn and face that and say, wait, this is not the voice of God, this inner critic. This inner critic isn't always working for my best life, and sometimes it keeps me from doing and having the things in life that I really want. I got to turn and face this inner critic, allowing more room for understanding, wing 9, and grace, wing 2. Both for themselves and others. Living in that grace, in that forgiveness, that acceptance, and then sharing that with everybody in your life. You're never not going to be a 1. You're always going to be a 1. You're always going to have these high ideals and standards. It's just balancing that with more understanding, more kindness, more grace, more joy. How do I know I'm right? Okay. Talk to the people that you live with. If I were to talk to the people that live with you, the people that can't get away from you, your family, your coworkers, everybody who's really close to you, and they heard me say what I just said, they would say, absolutely, 100%, absolutely, no question. They would agree with me, even if you do not. Okay, I want you to understand that. Even if you're listening to me saying, oh my goodness, more grace, more understanding, blah, 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 right? You may look at that and be like, that's not right, that's not correct. Let me talk to your wife. Let me talk to your kids. Let me talk to your people in your life that are trying to love you. And they would say, no, they don't need to work on trying to get better. They don't need to work on trying to, be more rigid or more inflexible or more correct or more right. They don't need to work on that. They need to work on the other side of it. So the people that love you and are trying to have a relationship with you, this would be the way you would move toward growth if that became your priority in life, to have healthier connections with people. Okay. Embracing imperfection, just like embracing that concept. You know what? Everybody's imperfect now. Nobody's Adam and Eve. Nobody's Jesus. Nobody's in the Garden of Eden. We're all imperfect. We're all broken. And that's just the way it is, life outside the garden. We're not in heaven. We're on earth. And there's a brokenness about everybody, and accepting that, and actually moving beyond accepting it, but embracing it, because it is our wound that drives us to a Savior. It is our brokenness that makes us look upward and say, help us, Lord. It's not our goodness that drives us to our knees. It's our failures. It's our sin. It's our brokenness that humbles us. And think about the Apostle Paul, who is, my opinion, a type 1. He literally had to repent of his righteousness. What does he say? He says, God told him, my grace is sufficient for you. That his strength is made perfect in weakness. For when I'm weak, that's when I'm actually very strong. And moving in this direction for you is going to feel like weakness. But for the people around you, it's going to feel like strength. Okay, so what can we do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 5 suggestions. 1, embrace imperfection, learning to see the value in imperfection and mistakes as learning opportunities, and opportunities to see that you are dependent on all these other people in your life. Wow, there's a lot of things I don't do right, or a lot of things I don't do well, or there's things in my life that I'm not really strong in. Good thing I have other people in my life to support me and to encourage me. Number 2, cultivating compassion. Wow, I blow it. I'm the biggest screw up in the room. I got to have compassion on other people because they're doing their best. They're doing what makes sense to them. And yeah, people are going to do the wrong thing, but I need to change my perspective. I'm not the judge and jury, unless literally you are the judge and jury, then of course be the judge and jury. But most of the time, you're not the judge and jury. So cultivating compassion. Seeing people not as, let's say, the enemy, but maybe as captives of the enemy. That one idea could change everything for you. Like, other people are not the enemy. Like, they may take positions that are very different and seem to be wrong in my worldview, but those people aren't really the enemy. We have an enemy, a spiritual enemy, but these people are more like captives of the enemy. That changes your perspective. All of a sudden now you have compassion where you used to just have anger and intolerance. Next is managing your anger constructively. Acknowledging and expressing anger in healthy ways. One of the best things you can ever say is, oh my goodness, I'm such a 1. There I go again. There I go again. I was just about to lose it over something so ridiculous like how the person in front of me is trying to park their car. Oh my goodness, I am such a 1. Catching yourself in that moment and saying, I am such a 1. Look, 90% of your problems is you're a 1 feeling the stuff 1s feel. That's what it is. And if you can catch that and tap yourself on the head and laugh at yourself and say, oh my goodness, I'm such a 1. I literally just about yelled at my wife because she's not loading the dishwasher the way I thought she should. I'm such a 1. He. Laugh at myself. See how much healthier that is than just simmering all the time? Balancing your principles with flexibility. realizing that if you lean any direction, it's this way. And what would it take to get you to lean a little bit more toward being more flexible? Finding balance through living according to your principles, yes, but with a certain level of flexibility, enough to adapt to the complexities of life and the complexities of the people that are trying to be in relationship with you. And then last, self-acceptance, working towards accepting yourselves as inherently in the image of God, valuable and worthy, regardless of all your achievements or how well you performed, or whether you got the results that you were hoping to get. By becoming aware of your tendency to rationalize and working toward accepting imperfection and complexity, ones can find greater peace and satisfaction and connection to themselves and to their lives and to others, moving beyond your rigid confines of perfectionism to embrace a more holistic view of yourselves and the world. Moving away from being hypercritical, hyper-judgmental. It's very hard to relate to that. And in your quest to be good, you could become quite bad. Okay, I'm not trying to beat you up at all. I'm just trying to understand every type and how to help each person. It's because I care. It's because I love you. And don't hear this as more criticism. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to walk on this journey with you, and we all listen to each other and realize every one of those other personality types, yes, even 7, is a legitimate way to see the world. It is a God-designed way to see the world. And there is wisdom in every type that wants to speak to you. You're not above the others. You're with the others. Your way is not the rightest way. Your way is one of 9 ways. And listening to the other types to gain that wisdom can be valuable for all of us. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. We're on this journey together, and as always, be present to life. I'll see you next time.